The billboards along Highway 40 screamed his name in 20-foot letters, but Nelson Lawan sat in the corner booth of Rosie's Diner at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, invisible. He'd built an empire, software that ran in every hospital in North America, a name that opened doors in boardrooms across 3 continents, a fortune that would take 3 generations to spend and exactly 47 days to live. The oncologist had been apologetic but clear. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Inoperable. Nelson had nodded, shaken the man's hand, and walked out of the office feeling nothing. Not fear, not grief, just a hollow curiosity about what, exactly, he'd spent 72 years building. That's when the testing began. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you're watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful, true stories alive. He'd always believed you could measure a person's character in small moments, the tip of an iceberg revealing the mountain beneath. So he started leaving tests everywhere he went. A wallet accidentally dropped near his lawyer. Stock tips shared with his driver. Leading questions to his accountant about offshore accounts. They all failed. Every single one. The lawyer pocketed $300 before returning the wallet. The driver played the stock market immediately. The accountant suggested ways to hide assets from the charities in Nelson's preliminary will. 47 days became 43, and Nelson's view of humanity had curdled into something bitter and resigned. His wealth would scatter like ashes to organizations with no soul, run by people who'd never look up from their quarterly reports long enough to see the faces they were supposed to help. Then he walked into Rosie's Diner. The place was nearly empty. A truck driver hunched over coffee at the counter. A young couple sharing fries in a booth, lost in each other's eyes with the oblivious intensity of first love, and one waitress working the floor. Cecilia Alcanara moved with an efficiency that spoke of too many double shifts. Late 20s, Nelson guessed, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that might have been beautiful if they weren't so tired. Her uniform was clean but faded, the name tag slightly crooked. She appeared at his table with a pot of coffee and a smile that looked genuine despite the late hour. Evening. Coffee to start. Please. Nelson watched as she poured, noting the slight tremor in her hands. Exhaustion, not nervousness. Long day, he asked. Long life, she said with a small laugh, setting down a menu. But who's counting? I'll give you a minute to decide. Nelson ordered the meatloaf. It came exactly as described. No frills, hot, edible. Cecilia checked on him once, refilled his coffee twice, and otherwise left him alone with his thoughts. Professional. Invisible in the way good servers become. Present but not intrusive. He watched her work. When the truck driver's credit card declined, she slipped to the register and paid his bill herself. $8 and change with a quiet word that let the man keep his dignity. When a young couple asked about the pie, she steered them toward the apple instead of the lemon meringue. Made today, she explained. The lemon's from yesterday, and honestly, it's gotten a little weepy. Small kindnesses. The kind that cost something but expected nothing back. Nelson felt something stir in his chest. Something that might have been hope or might have been heartburn. He decided to find out which. When Cecilia brought the check, Nelson pulled out his wallet. The total was $14.50. He placed a 20 on the small tray, then added 3 singles. $23. An $8 tip on a $15 meal. Just over 50%, generous by most standards, insultingly small by his. Cecilia picked up the tray, glanced at it, and set it back down. Sir, I think you made a mistake. She slid the 3 singles back toward him. The 20 covers it with change. No mistake, Nelson said, not touching the bills. That's your tip. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Her eyes weren't tired now. They were sharp. $8 on a $15 meal. She shook her head. You either think I gave terrible service, or you're testing me for some reason. Either way, I don't want it. Nelson's pulse quickened. The service was fine. Then this isn't a fair tip. Cecilia crossed her arms. Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I'm not interested. You want to tip $8? Fine. You want to tip nothing? That's fine too. But don't insult both of us by pretending this is generosity. What if I insist? Nelson pushed the bills back across the table. Then I'll insist right back. She pushed them toward him again. I don't need your money badly enough to pretend this is okay. The words hung between them. Nelson studied her face, the set jaw, the unwavering gaze. Pride, dignity, the rarest currencies in a world that traded in compromise. Why? He asked quietly. Why what? Why does it matter? Money's money. $8 is $8. It was 11:47 p.m., and the diner was empty except for them and the cook in the back. You want to know why? Cecilia responded. Because I've been on my feet for 11 hours. Because I smiled at the man who snapped his fingers at me and called me sweetheart like I was his dog. Because I cleaned up after someone's kid threw spaghetti on the floor, and the parents didn't even say sorry. Because I paid for that truck driver's meal out of tonight's tips because his card got declined, and he looked like he might cry. She took a breath. I do this job with everything I have. Not because it's glamorous. Not because it pays well. It doesn't. But because if I'm going to spend a third of my life doing something, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to treat people the way I'd want to be treated. I'm going to make the divorced dad feel less lonely when he orders dinner alone on his custody weekend. I'm going to sneak extra fries to the college kid who I know is stretching one meal across 2 days. Her voice softened. So when someone like you walks in here and leaves a tip that says your effort is worth exactly $8 and change, it's not about the money. It's about what it means. It means you think I'm the kind of person who can be bought with pocket change. It means you think my integrity has a price, and it's somewhere south of $10. I'm not that person. I can't afford to be. The moment I start accepting that I'm worth less than I am, I become less, and I've got nothing else in this world except who I am and what I stand for. So no, sir. Keep your $8. I'll sleep better. Nelson sat motionless. In his chest, something that had been frozen for decades began to crack. What's your name? He asked. It's on my tag. Cecilia. Cecilia what? She hesitated. Alcantara. What? Nelson pulled out a business card and a pen. He wrote on the back and slid it across the table. I need you to go to this address tomorrow at 2 p.m. Ask for Martin Breslow. He's my attorney. Cecilia didn't touch the card. What is this? An apology? Nelson stood, pulling $500 bills from his wallet and setting them on the table. This is your actual tip. 3,300%. And this he tapped the card is something more important. I don't understand. You will. Nelson looked at her one more time, memorizing her face. Thank you, Cecilia Alcantara. You just gave me something I thought was extinct. What? Hope. He walked out into the November night, leaving her standing there with the card in her hand and questions on her lips. Cecilia didn't sleep that night. She looked up the address, a law firm in the city's financial district, the kind with marble lobbies and partners whose names you saw in newspapers. She Googled Martin Breslow and found articles about estate planning for the ultra-wealthy. Then she Googled the man from the diner, Nelson Lewan, founder of MedLogic Systems, net worth estimated at $2.4 billion. Philanthropist, recluse, and according to a 6-week-old article buried on page 3 of the results, terminal cancer patient with months to live. Her hand shook as she read. The man she'd lectured about integrity was dying. The man she turned down $8 from could buy a small country. At 1:45 p.m. the next day, Cecilia walked into Breslow & Associates wearing the only dress she owned and shoes she'd borrowed from a roommate. Martin Breslow's office was all dark wood and leather, with a view of the city that made her dizzy. The attorney himself was 60-something, gray-haired, and had eyes that had seen every permutation of human greed. Miss Alcantara, he gestured to a chair. Mr. Lewan said you'd come. Though truthfully, we had a bet. I thought you wouldn't show. Why? Because what he's proposing is so unusual, most people would assume it was a prank. Breslow opened a file. Nelson Lewan is revising his will. A substantial revision. He'd like to explain it to you himself. A door opened behind her. Nelson walked in, looking smaller somehow than he had in the diner. Freilier. He wore a cashmere sweater and slacks that probably cost more than Cecilia made in 6 months. "You came," he said. "You didn't give me much choice. Your lawyer called my work. I needed to be sure." Nelson sat down across from her. "Cecilia, I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. I have about 6 weeks left, maybe less." "I know. I Googled you." A ghost of a smile. "Of course you did. Then you know I have more money than any person reasonably needs, and no one to leave it to. No wife, divorced twice. No children. No family that matters." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." "I'm not." Nelson leaned forward. "I've spent the last month testing people, leaving breadcrumbs of my fortune around to see who'd chase them. Lawyers, advisors, friends, everyone failed. They all showed me exactly who they are when they think no one's watching. And who they are is disappointing. Why are you telling me this? Because you passed a test you didn't know you were taking. When you refused that tip, you show me something I thought didn't exist anymore. Someone who can't be bought. Someone who values their principles over comfort. Someone who understands that who you are matters more than what you have." Cecilia's throat tightened. "Mr. Lawan, let me finish." He nodded to Breslow, who slid a document across the desk. "I'm rewriting my will. A significant portion of my estate, $50 million, is going to you." The room tilted. "What? $50 million, Miss Alcantara. With conditions." Cecilia couldn't breathe. "You can't, I don't, this is insane." "The conditions are these," Nelson continued, as if she hadn't spoken. $10 million goes to you unrestricted. You can do whatever you want with it. Pay off debts, buy a house, invest it, burn it, your choice. The remaining $40 million goes into a foundation in your name. You'll have full control, but it must be used for charitable purposes. Education, healthcare, poverty relief, you decide. This isn't real." Cecilia looked at Breslow. "Tell me this isn't real." "It's very real," the attorney said. "Pending your acceptance." "What?" Cecilia turned to Nelson. "You don't know me. I'm nobody." "You're wrong." Nelson's voice was soft but firm. "You're someone who paid for a stranger's meal with money you needed. Someone who steered customers toward the better pie, even when the worst one would have sold just fine. Someone who told a billionaire to keep his money because it didn't reflect your worth." He reached across the desk and took her hand. His skin was paper-thin cold. "I built an empire, Cecilia. I have buildings with my name on them. I have products that save lives every day, but I never built a legacy that mattered. I never knew what to do with all this except accumulate more." His eyes glistened. "You told me last night that you have nothing except who you are and what you stand for. That's not nothing. That's everything. That's what I spent 72 years missing. So I'm giving you what I have, and I'm trusting you to do what I couldn't, to make it mean something." Cecilia felt tears on her cheeks. "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You already know how to see people, how to show up, how to choose, right even when it costs you." Nelson squeezed her hand. "Now you'll have the resources to do it on a scale that matters, and there's one more thing." Breslow slid another document across the desk. "What's this?" "A travel fund," Nelson said. $1 million, separate from everything else. You mentioned last night that you've given a third of your life to that job. I want you to take a year, a full year, and see the world. Paris, Tokyo, Machu Picchu, Antarctica, wherever you've dreamed of going." "I've never left the state," Cecilia whispered. "Then it's time you did. The foundation can wait a year. The money can wait, but you," Nelson's voice cracked. "You deserve to know what's out there. You deserve to stand on a mountain in Nepal, and a beach in Bali, and a street corner in Rome, and see what your life can be when it's not just about survival." Cecilia covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Nelson Lawan died 39 days later, in a hospital room with a view of the mountains he'd bought land on but never hiked. Cecilia was there, holding his hand. "Thank you," he whispered in those final moments. "For what?" "For reminding me that people are still worth believing in." She stayed until the end. Cecilia stood on the observation deck of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, watching the sun set over the desert. In the past year, she'd walked the Great Wall of China, swum in the cenotes of Mexico, stood in St. Peter's Basilica with her mouth open in wonder, watched the northern lights dance over Iceland's black sand beaches. She'd learned to scuba dive in Thailand, learned to cook pasta in Italy, learned to say thank you in 17 languages. But more than that, she'd learned what Nelson had tried to tell her, that she was worth more than she believed, that her life could be larger than the four walls of Rosie's diner, that the world was full of people who needed exactly what she had to give: compassion, dignity, and someone who saw them as more than invisible. The Alcantara Foundation had just opened its first school in her hometown. 3 more were planned. They'd funded medical care for 200 families, provided scholarships to 50 students, created a program that paid restaurant workers children's college tuition. And Cecilia was just getting started. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photo she kept there. Nelson in his hospital bed, smiling despite everything, his hand clasped in hers. On the back of that business card he'd given her, the one she'd nearly thrown away, he'd written something she'd found after he died. Character is what you are when no one important is watching. Thank you for being exactly who you are. She had it wrong that night in the diner. He hadn't been testing her to see if she could be bought. He'd been searching for proof that people like her still existed. And in finding her, he'd found a way to make everything he'd built matter. Cecilia tucked the phone away and looked out at the sprawling city below, alive with lights and possibilities. Tomorrow she'll fly to Kenya. Next month, New Zealand. The year after that, who knew? But eventually, she'd go home. Back to that small town. Back to people who needed someone to see them the way she'd once needed to be seen. Because Nelson had given her more than money. He'd given her permission to believe that one person, armed with compassion and resources, could change everything, and that was a legacy worth living for. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and that even a broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena, because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently if you were the dying millionaire. Would you have given out the fortune or donated directly to charity foundations? Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? We'd love to hear your story.